The golden light of the late afternoon poured into the streets of Vienna, casting a soft amber glow across the cobbled roads. Lucas Miller, a 38-year-old financial analyst, sat at his sleek mahogany desk, absent-mindedly tapping his fingers against the surface. His home office was quiet, except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floor beneath him. The room was a testament to the life he had built. Framed degrees from prestigious universities, photos of vacations with his wife, Elena, and the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the corner. Vienna had always been his sanctuary, a place where art, history, and modernity converged in a symphony of beauty. He and Elena had made their life here, a comfortable one, full of laughter, travel, and mutual dreams. She was an art curator, her 36-year-old self constantly moving between cities for exhibitions and gallery openings. Their marriage, now 8 years strong, had always felt stable. They had weathered the storms of early careers, infertility struggles, and the quiet battles of long-term relationships. Or so he thought. For months now, an unsettling feeling had gnawed at the back of his mind. Elena, once full of animated stories about her work and the artists she admired, had become distant. Her phone had become a permanent fixture in her hand, her gaze often slipping to it mid-conversation. Lucas tried not to read too much into it. He reminded himself that they were both busy, they were getting older, and the honeymoon phase couldn't last forever, right? Still, there were signs. She had grown secretive about her trips, casual mentions of just another gallery in Paris, or a quick visit to Berlin, seemed more frequent than usual. Lucas noticed the subtle shifts, the slightly hurried goodbyes before work trips, the lack of intimacy when she returned. It was unlike Elena to be emotionally distant. They had always been open with each other, talking through whatever struggles or stresses they faced. But now something was different. It was a quiet Friday evening when Lucas finally saw what had been hidden from him all these months. As he went through his emails, deleting spam, and reviewing some work-related documents, a message appeared in his inbox. The subject line read, "For your eyes only." Lucas felt a strange tension settle over him as he opened the email. It contained no text, just a few attachments, photos. His breath hitched in his throat as he clicked on the first one. It was Elena, his wife, smiling coyly in a hotel room. A room he knew all too well. It was the same boutique hotel they had stayed in during their honeymoon in Paris. The plush, cream-colored duvet, the abstract painting above the headboard. It was unmistakable. But what shook him to his core was the man beside her. He was young, perhaps in his early 30s, with dark hair and a chiseled jawline. In the next picture, Elena was kissing him. The man's hands were wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer as they lay on the bed. Lucas stared at the images in disbelief. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the rest of the pictures, each one more damning than the last. Elena, the woman he had loved, trusted, and built his life with, was in bed with another man. And this wasn't some fleeting moment of indiscretion. The way they looked at each other, the intimacy in their touches, it spoke of a deeper connection, a secret life that Elena had kept from him. He sat there for what felt like hours, his heart pounding in his chest. His world was crumbling around him, and yet everything remained painfully still. How could she do this? Why hadn't he seen it coming? The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing second, echoing the emptiness he felt inside. Lucas's mind raced with questions, each more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? Was it just one affair, or had there been others? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do now? Elena came home that night, oblivious to the storm waiting for her. The sound of the front door clicking shut echoed through their large apartment. Lucas remained in his office, his eyes fixed on the photos. He heard her footsteps, the soft hum of her voice, as she greeted him from the hallway. "Lucas, are you still working?" Elena called, her voice cheerful. He didn't respond immediately. His throat was dry, and his heart felt as if it had been ripped from his chest. How could she sound so normal, so unburdened by the betrayal she had been living? Moments later, Elena appeared in the doorway. Her smile faltered as she noticed the stern expression on Lucas's face. His hand clutched his phone, still displaying the email. "Lucas, is everything okay?" she asked, a hint of concern creeping into her voice. Without a word, Lucas handed her his phone. Elena's face went pale as she stared at the screen. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, he saw real fear in them. "Elena," Lucas's voice was strained, barely above a whisper. "What is this?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head, her lips quivering. "Lucas, I can explain," she stammered, her voice cracking. "Explain?" Lucas's voice rose, filled with anguish and disbelief. "How do you explain this?" He gestured toward the photos. "How long, Elena? How long have you been lying to me?" Elena's tears spilled over, and she covered her face with her hands, unable to meet his gaze. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "I never meant for it to happen. Damien, it just happened. I didn't." "Damien." Lucas spat the name out like venom. "Is that his name? How long, Elena?" "6 months," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's been going on for 6 months." Lucas felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deceit, and betrayal. He had spent that time believing they were still building a future together, while she had been living a double life. "Why?" he asked, his voice broken. "Was I not enough for you?" Elena shook her head, her sobs coming harder now. "No, it's not like that. It wasn't about you, Lucas. I was lost, confused. I didn't know how to handle everything. Work, the pressure, our problems. Our problems?" Lucas interrupted, his anger flaring. "What problems, Elena? I thought we were happy. I thought we were working through everything together." "I don't know," Elena sobbed. "I don't know why I did it. I was selfish, and I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I'm so sorry, Lucas. Please, you have to believe me." Lucas stood, his hands shaking with rage and sorrow. He couldn't bear to look at her, the woman he had shared his life with, who had promised him forever, had shattered every ounce of trust between them. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore," he said quietly, his voice trembling. "I don't even know who you are." Elena reached out to him, desperate, her tear-streaked face pleading for forgiveness. "Please, Lucas, we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't leave me, please." Lucas stepped back, his eyes filled with pain. "I need time," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need time to think." With that, Lucas walked out of the room, leaving Elena behind, her sobs echoing through the apartment. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stay, not right now. The weight of her betrayal was too much to bear. He wandered the streets of Vienna, the night air cold against his skin. The city, once his sanctuary, now felt foreign and empty. He passed by the cafes and parks they used to frequent together, each one a painful reminder of what they had lost. How had it come to this? How had he been so blind? As the hours passed, Lucas found himself sitting on a bench by the Danube River, staring out at the water. His mind raced with conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. He had loved Elena with every fiber of his being, but now he wasn't sure if that love was enough to repair the damage. Could he ever forgive her? Could he ever trust her again? The questions weighed heavily on him, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the answers. Love, he realized, was not always enough to hold a relationship together. It required trust, honesty, and loyalty, things that had been broken beyond repair. But as the sun began to rise over the city, Lucas made a decision. He would confront Elena one last time, but this time he would be honest with himself about what he truly wanted. He couldn't change the past, but he could decide his future. A week later, Elena sat across from Lucas in a small cafe near their apartment. her eyes swollen from days of crying. Her hands trembled as she clutched a steaming cup of coffee, avoiding Lucas's gaze. The cafe was quiet, with only a few early morning patrons scattered around. The soft murmur of conversation filled the air, but the tension between them was palpable. Lucas sat across from her, his face impassive, but his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The week apart had given him time to reflect, to sift through the debris of their relationship. He hadn't come to any easy conclusions, but he knew one thing for certain: the trust between them was shattered, and no matter how much time passed, it wouldn't be easy to rebuild. Elena finally broke the silence. "I'm so sorry, Lucas," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft clatter of plates. "I've thought about what I did every single day. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could undo everything." Lucas stared at her for a moment, his blue eyes cold, searching her face for some sign of the woman he had once known. She looked so fragile now, her once bright aura dulled by guilt and sorrow. But underneath it all, he still saw the Elena he had fallen in love with, the woman who used to dance barefoot in their living room, who loved art so passionately that she could make him see beauty. The woman who used to dance barefoot in their living room, who loved art so passionately that she could make him see beauty in even the simplest things. But that woman had betrayed him in the worst way. "I've had a lot of time to think," Lucas began, his voice steady but firm. "And I've been asking myself one question over and over. Why? Why did you do it, Elena? I need to understand. Was it something I did? Was it something missing in our relationship?" Elena wiped her eyes, her hands trembling as she set down the cup. "No, it wasn't you, Lucas. It was never you. I don't know how to explain it without sounding like I'm making excuses, but I was lost. We were going through a rough patch, and I started feeling like I wasn't enough, like I was losing myself in the marriage. When I met Damien during that work trip, it wasn't love or even lust. It was an escape, a distraction from everything I was feeling." "6 months, Elena," Lucas said bitterly, leaning forward. "6 months is more than a mistake. You don't make a mistake for half a year." "I know," she whispered. "I know that. And I hate myself for it every single day. Damien meant nothing to me, but I let him into my life because I was too afraid to face what was happening between us. I was selfish, and I betrayed you." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words press down on him. "I gave you everything," he said softly, his voice breaking. "I trusted you. You were the person I thought I could rely on no matter what. And now, I don't know how to look at you without seeing those pictures in my mind." Elena flinched, her tears falling freely now. "I know I can't take back what I did, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want to make things right, Lucas. I don't want to lose you." Lucas sat back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Elena. And even if I could, I don't know if I can trust you again. Trust is the foundation of everything we had, and you destroyed it." Elena's face crumpled, and she sobbed quietly into her hands. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, I know that, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, if you'll let me." Lucas remained silent, watching her crumble under the weight of her guilt. He wanted to feel compassion, to offer some kind of comfort, but the anger and hurt inside him were too overwhelming. He had spent years building a life with Elena, and now all of it felt like a lie. "I loved you, Elena," Lucas said finally, his voice soft but filled with sadness. "And maybe a part of me still does. But love isn't enough to fix this. I need time, and I need space. I can't just pretend like everything will go back to the way it was." Elena nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I understand. I'll give you as much time as you need. Just don't shut me out completely, please." Lucas stood up, reaching for his coat. He felt exhausted, emotionally drained, as if he had just fought a battle and lost. "I don't know what the future holds, Elena, but right now, I need to figure things out on my own." Without another word, Lucas walked out of the cafe, leaving Elena behind. The cold morning air hit his face as he stepped onto the street, the weight of the conversation pressing heavily on his chest. He had made his decision. For now, at least, he couldn't stay in a relationship where trust had been so completely destroyed. As he walked through the quiet streets of Vienna, Lucas felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. He didn't know what his next steps would be, but he knew he had taken the first one. He had chosen himself. He had chosen to heal, even if that meant walking away from the woman he had once loved with all his heart. 6 months later, the city had shifted from winter's icy grip to the warmth of spring. Lucas sat on a park bench near the Danube River, the soft sound of the water flowing peacefully behind him. It had been 6 months since that fateful night when he had discovered Elena's betrayal. 6 months of soul-searching, of healing, of trying to find some sense of closure. He had spent the early weeks in a haze, grappling with the overwhelming emotions of anger, betrayal, and grief. He had rented a small apartment on the other side of the city, away from the memories that clung to their shared home. He kept his distance from Elena, answering only a few of her messages and calls, needing the space to breathe, to think. In those months, Lucas found himself gravitating towards his old passions, things he had set aside during the busyness of his marriage. He spent more time at art galleries, immersed in the quiet beauty of paintings and sculptures that had always brought him peace. He started hiking again, reconnecting with nature, and finding solace in the mountains that framed the outskirts of Vienna. But even in the midst of his healing, Elena's absence was a constant shadow. He couldn't deny that he still thought about her, wondered if she was okay. He knew she was seeing a therapist, trying to make sense of her own actions. But Lucas had made no promises about their future. He was still searching for answers within himself. One afternoon, while walking along the Danube, Lucas received a message from Elena. It was short and simple. "Can we meet?" He hesitated, unsure if he was ready to see her again. But something inside him, perhaps a lingering need for closure, urged him to agree. He replied with a time and place, and a few days later, they met once again in the same cafe where they had last spoken. Elena looked different now, older, perhaps more worn from the emotional toll of the past months. But there was also something softer about her, as if she had come to terms with her mistakes. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. "I didn't know if you'd agree to meet," Elena said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup. Lucas shrugged, his voice calm. "I wasn't sure either." She looked down, gathering her thoughts before speaking again. "I've been seeing a therapist. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you the way I did. I know I can't undo the past, but I've been working on myself." Lucas nodded. "I'm glad you're taking steps to heal, but I've also been doing my own healing, and I've come to realize that I need to focus on myself too." Elena's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she nodded in understanding. "I know. I don't expect anything from you, Lucas. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Truly sorry." For the first time in months, Lucas felt a sense of closure. He had been holding on to his anger for so long. But now, sitting across from Elena, he realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant letting go of the pain and choosing to move forward, whether that was together or apart. "I forgive you, Elena," Lucas said quietly, his voice steady. "But that doesn't mean we can go back to what we had. Too much has changed." Elena nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I understand. I'll always be grateful for the time we had together." With that, they sat in silence. The weight of their shared history finally lifted. They would part ways, both of them forever changed by what had happened, but perhaps better for it.
Where are you going? To pick up Bobby if that's okay, I replied. I was hoping we could, reconnect tonight. Do you really need to get him now? I miss my son. I'll be back soon, I said and walked out. I drove to Angus Steakhouse, hungry since I hadn't eaten dinner. The restaurant didn't disappoint. I savored the tender beef, mentally reviewing the night's events, hoping my plan would work out. Mrs. Stevenson thanked me for the generous tip. I might need her help again soon. Bobby was thrilled to see me and couldn't stop laughing all the way home. I bathed and fed him before putting him to bed. Tracy informed me she was cooking something light, but I told her I had already eaten and she should take care of herself. Offended, she brushed me off, not wanting to upset Bobby. Since we both had work tomorrow, I got ready for bed. Tracy wanted to talk. What's going on, Brian? You seemed interested in Elliot's offer, then you shut me out. What happened? She asked. I'm glad you asked. Let me answer with some questions. Your answers might provide clarity, I replied. Go ahead, she said. Just before they left, 3 men grabbed me in my own house. You said nothing. Is that true? It wasn't like that, she objected. Wasn't it? 3 men grabbed me, yes or no, Tracy? Did it happen? Yes, she said, but I interrupted her. Yes, it did. Did you protest? Were there any witnesses who were also silent? Yes or no, Tracy? No, she answered reluctantly. We're starting to understand. Next question. Did I ask you to take my phone and delete anything from it? Yes or no, Tracy? Be honest. No, she said quietly. So bear with me. This is a long question. Be careful so I don't have to repeat myself. You admit you had no objection to me being restrained in my own home. You also admit you took my cell phone and deleted recordings, not at my request, but at someone else's. Is that true, Tracy? Yes or no? I asked, my frustration clear. Yes, Tracy replied. Good, we're almost there. Since I was in the room and heard no one ask you to delete anything from my phone, you must have agreed to this task without my knowledge. Is that correct? I pressed. Tracy looked down. Yes, that's correct. I hadn't thought of it that way. You make it seem like a betrayal, she said, her voice shaking. It is a betrayal, Tracy. Now, why did I drop you like a hot potato? Your own answers reveal why. You proved today that you were on their side, not mine. Now I'm going to bed alone. I don't want to be around someone who so indifferently betrays me, I declared. Tracy started sobbing as I left her in the hallway. I locked the door. Around 4 a.m, I heard her trying to open it, but the lock foiled her attempts. Tuesday morning, I talked to the vice president. Dan, can you recommend a good divorce attorney? One who will fight hard for the husband? I asked him. Please tell me you're not asking for yourself, Brian, Dan pleaded, looking worried. Unfortunately, I am. I assumed you might know someone, I replied, trying to keep my composure. I'm friends with Ted Russ from our legal firm. He can recommend someone. Let me call him and get back to you, Dan offered. Thanks, Dan, I said, feeling a bit of relief. And don't worry, Brian. This stays between us, Dan assured me. You don't know how good that feels to hear. Thank you, Dan, I said, genuinely appreciating his support. On Ted's recommendation, I called B. Thorne's office and set up an appointment for 2:30 that afternoon. It turned out to be Beatrice Thorne. She told me her caseload was 70% women and 30% men, but she fights hard for her clients despite the circumstances. I convinced her of my position, and she agreed to take my case. She warned me I'd be paying child support until Bobby turned 18, including college expenses. I said I was fine providing for my son and hoped for 50/50 custody. For alimony, she said I'd likely pay for 3 to 5 years, depending on the judge. In this state, it's usually 1 year of alimony for every 2 years of marriage, up to 20 years. After that, it's limited to 10 years. Although I'd have to deal with it, the thought of paying her to have fun with idiots pissed me off. Expecting our family to grow, Tracy and I rented the house we lived in for the past 4 years while planning to build our dream home. I had many sketches for our future retreat. Now those dreams are gone. At least the house won't be sold, divided, or fought over. Bobby, being so young, isn't attached to any particular home. If Tracy continues to rent the house, it doesn't matter to me. I know I could never sleep in the master bedroom again, knowing it had been used by that idiot. Who knows how many times they had been together before I discovered her infidelity. B explained that the average divorce in our state takes 8 months if uncontested and a year if contested. I hoped for the 8-month timeline. Staying married to a traitorous wife held no appeal now that I had decided to divorce Tracy. B also mentioned there was no financial benefit to filing a declaration of infidelity, but it could help in custody disputes. She said the paperwork could be ready by Thursday afternoon, and I asked her to serve Tracy at work on Friday at 10 a.m., so her friends and colleagues could witness it. After resolving the divorce issues and agreeing on a fee, I asked about living arrangements until the divorce was finalized. What questions do you have, Brian? B, my attorney asked. My main concern is time with my son. 8 months to a year is a long time for both of us. I don't want to be an absent father. Would it be illegal or inappropriate to continue living in the same house to maximize my time with him? I inquired. While not uncommon, it can be challenging, B replied. How so? I asked, curious. When she's served on Friday, she'll be extremely unhappy. If you're nearby, she might retaliate. Are you prepared for her anger? B explained. Absolutely, I can handle it, knowing we'll be legally separated, I responded confidently. She may not want a divorce. Often, cheating wives want both their husband and their affair. She might try to prevent it, B warned. But it's a legal process, right? She can't stop it just because she wants to, I said, trying to understand the situation fully. True, but she could complicate things, B noted. How? I asked, concerned. If you become intimate before the divorce, the timeline resets to 0 and you'll wait another 8 months. The state will see it as a desire to end the divorce process, B explained. That won't be a problem for me, though I can see Tracy trying to lure me into bed to disrupt the process. I have an iron will, B. I won't give in, I said firmly. You don't have to, B insisted. Tracy could claim you had an affair, and unless you can prove otherwise, which is nearly impossible, the timeline resets. The judge will find it hard to believe you weren't intimate while living together. I've seen it before, Brian, and I strongly advise against it. I countered. If she makes such a claim, would she need to provide specific details like time and place? I could refute those. Yes, she'd need details, but it would still be your word against hers, and the judge might believe her, especially if she's tearfully persuasive, B cautioned. Leave it to me. Thank you, B. You've been a great help, I said, feeling somewhat reassured. I then discussed another legal issue that I would face after the divorce. Tracy usually gets home half an hour before me, so I wasn't surprised to find her cooking. I avoided the kitchen and headed upstairs to shower. Using the hall bathroom gave her fewer opportunities to trap me. I took a change of clothes with me, practicing living separately under the same roof. When I came out of the bathroom, she was waiting in the hallway. Dinner will be ready soon. Bobby's in his high chair. You smell nice, she said. I'll be right down. Thanks, I replied, unlocking my spare bedroom door. The tension was palpable, but she didn't say anything sarcastic. As we ate, she began, I'd like to explain about the cell phone last night. Go ahead, I said calmly. Elliot knew you were recording and said it wasn't fair to expose everyone to that risk. They couldn't leave until the threat was neutralized. He suggested I delete the records myself in your presence. I see. And why did they trust you to do that to your husband? I asked. Because I gave them my word, Brian. I don't understand, she said, sounding confused. Understand what? Didn't you promise to be faithful to me on our wedding day? Silence followed my remarks, and I was glad for it. Darling, I don't want you to think I'm on their side. That's not true, Tracy insisted. It isn't. What if those men had grabbed you in our house? Do you think I would have stood by silently? I challenged. What choice did you have, Brian? They could have taken you easily, she reasoned. That's true, but that wouldn't have stopped me. I would have fought for you because I would have been on your side, not theirs. Last night, you acted like one of them, I pointed out. I'm sorry you don't understand, Brian. I explained about the cell phone. I don't know what else to say, she said, looking frustrated. There's nothing more to say, is there? I joked. You're right. How did you find those pictures, Brian? I'd like to know, she asked, her curiosity piqued. I'm sure you would. Maybe one of your friends isn't as loyal to your cause. What if a coworker sent those pictures to me? How would you feel? I teased. Who? Please tell me who, a man or a woman? She asked urgently. I can't tell you, Tracy. Why not? She asked, exasperated. I gave my word, I said with a grin. She realized she wasn't getting anywhere and decided to change the topic. Did you enjoy watching? She asked, trying a different angle. No, I just saw a bunch of animals, I replied. Bluntly. That's right, Brian, it doesn't have to be emotional. It's supposed to strengthen our marriage, she argued. How's that going? Our marriage is hanging by a thread, I retorted. I already feel closer to you, she added sarcastically. Don't be like that. You don't understand. Tracy, has our life become so boring and devoid of fantasy that you think we can't survive as a couple without involving others? I asked, my voice filled with disbelief. I didn't say that. It's not about survival. Don't you want to do more than just survive? Shouldn't we take chances to strengthen our marriage? What's the damage in that? She asked, her voice full of frustration. The damage is the destruction of the trust we once had. Your experiments are tearing our marriage apart. Maybe your friends don't value fidelity, but I do. I don't trust you anymore, Tracy. You've shown you're capable of doing whatever you want behind my back. If it's so important, why didn't you talk to me before jumping into bed with another man? I responded, my voice rising. I knew you'd react like this. I thought if I participated and saw the benefits, I could bring what I learned to you. When you see the improvements, you'd understand the value, she explained, trying to justify her actions. So you and Elliot see yourselves as enlightened, thinking people like me need to be spoon-fed your superior knowledge? How elitist of you. I didn't realize how lucky I was, I said, sarcasm dripping from my words. She noticed. Let me show you what I've learned. I adopted techniques from Elliot and watched Gail closely last night. The goal is to improve our love life, not destroy it. Let me show you. You won't regret it, she enthused, attempting to persuade me. Every time I look at you, I cringe. I'm not interested in kissing you anytime soon. All you offer now is what used to be mine, shared freely with other men, I retorted, my anger barely contained. Only yours? You don't own me, Brian. I never have and never will, she said defiantly. You're right. I never claimed to own you. I thought you were mine because you said you gave yourself to me. Now you've taken that back and given it to another man. You've broken something in me, Tracy, and I'm not sure it can be fixed, I said, my voice filled with sorrow and finality. She started sobbing again. That was the last conversation we had until Friday. I spent all my free time with Bobby. I changed his diaper and didn't ask for her help. It was almost a game of who bathed him the most. Bobby enjoyed the attention, and so did I. Over the next few days, I researched Elliot and Gail Franklin. I found almost nothing. The only public record for an Elliot Franklin was a homeless man arrested for soliciting money downtown. The photo and age didn't match the one who had entertained Tracy. I'll keep trying to find out more about them. I arranged for Tracy to be served at 10 a.m. on Friday because I was attending a meeting of the local chapter of facilities managers. These meetings last 2 to 4 hours, including lunch, and are sponsored by contractors advertising their services. If Tracy called, my secretary would confirm my extended absence, and I'd leave my phone on silent, only answering emergency work calls. I wasn't avoiding Tracy. I wanted to give her time to process the shock before talking. When I returned to work, I saw her numerous messages and called her back. She answered quickly, clearly upset. It's about time. Are you serious? Getting served in front of my friends? Do you know how embarrassed I was? Are you really divorcing me over this? I told you it was nothing, Brian. When will you get that through your head? Why won't you return my calls? Why won't you talk to me? My secretary should have informed you that I was in a management meeting. I called you back as soon as I could. I have a job to do. And when have I refused to talk to you? You've been avoiding me for the past 2 days. I'm still talking to you now. Let's resume this conversation after work when we have more time, I said firmly. She started crying. I don't want a divorce. Please, Brian, don't divorce me. We'll talk tonight, okay, Tracy? Okay, she said, sniffling. I love you. Tonight then. Goodbye, Tracy, I said, ending the call. I had one more short meeting about a lab issue and called our contractor to resolve it. I arrived home early, knowing Friday afternoons are usually quiet. Realizing she might not want to cook, I picked up Chick-fil-A for dinner and texted her. She arrived shortly after I did. I grabbed Bobby from her car and carried him inside. She hugged me as I held him. I set him in his high chair and helped feed him. Babies can be messy eaters. And Bobby was at the stage where he liked to throw food. She thanked me for the takeout. We chatted and talked happily with Bobby even as she cried. I spent the evening with Bobby, not leaving his side until he was asleep. He was my focus and reason for enduring the situation. Later, I found Tracy in the living room, looking over the divorce papers. She took a deep breath to calm herself before speaking. I'm sorry, Brian, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? She asked, her voice trembling. Honestly, it's the first apology since this started. What exactly are you apologizing for, Tracy? I asked, my tone stern. I'm sorry you saw those pictures and found out the way you did. I can only imagine how uncomfortable it was for you, she said, trying to sound sincere. So you're sorry I found out? Not sorry you cheated? Got it, I replied, feeling the anger rise. Don't say that. Elliot said, once you see the benefits of our group, you'd accept it. You'd have the freedom to be with other women just like I am with other men, she explained, desperately trying to justify her actions. Of course, that's what he said. You and Elliot both failed to consult me about infidelity. It's a shame you trust his words over mine. He doesn't know me or our marriage, and apparently neither do you, I said, feeling betrayed. Look, I realize now I acted wrongly. You're right, I should have talked to you first. Elliot told me that if I had approached you, things would have gone smoothly. He's convinced you'll come around, but now I'm not sure. Why don't you call off the divorce, and let's get back to normal? She pleaded. Normal? That train is derailed. You blew it up when you cheated. Just sign the papers and let's move on with our lives, I said, feeling resolute. You don't want Bobby to end up in a single-parent family calling another man daddy. No man wants that for his son. Reconciliation is the best option, she argued. I wouldn't want him to call another woman mom if you remarried after a divorce, I countered. That's true. You should have thought about all this before you broke your vows, I said, my voice cold. It would hurt to hear him call another man daddy, but it's better than living in a house full of lies and deceit. I wouldn't be part of your group of infidelity. They may be attractive, but they are disgusting to me. I can never be intimate with you again, Tracy. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, I said, my words laced with finality. You're just saying that to hurt me, and it really hurts. One point, Brian, she said, her voice breaking. What if I gave up the idea completely? Swore I'd never get involved again? What if I turned my back on them as friends? I'm desperate. You and Bobby are the best things in my life. I'm sorry you think I've turned my back on us, but it's not true. I value you two above anything else, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I hear your words, Tracy, but I don't believe you. You've already proven yourself to be a liar. I can't trust you anymore. Just sign the papers and let's get this over with, I said, my voice firm. I'll never sign those papers. I don't want a divorce, and I will fight you every step of the way, no matter how long it takes. I may have lost you now, Brian, but I want you back. I'll crawl to you on my hands and knees until you take me back, she vowed, her determination evident. Too bad you didn't have enough faith in us to stay true to your vows. Once a cheater, always a cheater. That's how I'll always see you, I quipped. She started sobbing, realizing the difficulty ahead. What now? She asked. I hope you don't expect me to leave. I'm staying here with Bobby. We have nowhere else to go, she mumbled. You're right. Bobby is my whole world now. I don't want to be away from him. That's why I'll stay here during the divorce. I won't get in your way. I don't need you to do my laundry, cook, or clean. You take care of your needs, I'll take care of mine, and we'll both take care of Bobby. Just don't touch me. You're disgusting to me. Now, we will coexist until the divorce is final, but there will be no reconciliation, I stated firmly. Her hope turned to dejection. I heard you, Brian, but divorce is a long road and a lot can happen. I'm going to get you back, honey. I swear I will, she declared. As long as you keep hanging out with your friends, you won't have a chance. I won't socialize with them again. If you ever bring one of your lovers here, you and he will regret it. Is that clear? I warned. Of course, sweetheart. I'll turn my back on them. If that's what it takes, do you want me to quit my job and be a full-time mom? She asked, trying to find a way to mend things. No, it's too late for that. Besides, if you did, I'd just be paying more in child support in the divorce, I responded bluntly. She didn't like my response but kept a cheerful smile. I decided to treat this as a temporary business arrangement. Nothing would stop me from spending time with my son. For a few weeks, we communicated politely, saying only what was necessary. Surprisingly, we agreed to several suggestions from my attorney. I would pay the rent if Tracy paid the utilities. I canceled all utilities in our joint names and reissued them in hers. Both our cars were paid off, so we each paid for our own gas and insurance. We took care of our own meals, so there was no need to share groceries. Financial independence was easier than I expected. Since I still paid most expenses, she accepted it. I transferred half of our savings to a new account in my name and left the rest in hers. She was unpleasant for a few days, but soon realized I was just enforcing the divorce terms she refused to sign. Tracy made every effort to engage me in conversation. I was always polite and never refused unless she got personal. I never asked her for anything or started conversations. One day, while looking for socks in my desk drawer, I realized I hadn't seen the 3 pictures of Tracy and her lover. I urgently searched all the drawers but couldn't find them. I knew who had taken them. Examining the lock on my door, I noticed fine scratches, suggesting she had a locksmith make a key. The next day, I bought 2 new identical locks for the bedroom and bathroom doors and kept the keys hidden. She didn't want me to know she could access my room, and I didn't want her to know she couldn't anymore. Her continued betrayal confirmed my decision to divorce was right. I wondered if she'd lie about her date with Elliot. After a few months of doubt, she began asking me to take her out or do couple activities. I always declined politely. She was getting nervous, missing her friends, but remembered her promise not to socialize with them. Then I started getting calls and messages from them, inviting me out or offering to stay away. I blocked each number without responding. In mid-December, she informed me she was having dinner with her friend Cassidy on Saturdays if I didn't mind watching Bobby. I agreed as long as she didn't bring anyone into the house. I joined my employer's bowling league on those Saturday nights, enjoying myself and the attention Bobby got from the ladies. It was much better than sitting at home wondering about Tracy. One day, I got home later than Tracy, and she asked where I had been with Bobby. I told her the truth. She asked to come along next time, and I told her honestly that I only left the house when she did. This upset her, but pleasing Tracy was no longer my concern. She often asked how we could be a loving couple again if I never gave her a chance. She never signed the divorce papers, which were supposed to take a year. 6 months later, my attorney, B. Thorne, informed me that Tracy's lawyer had successfully argued for 10 mandatory marriage counseling sessions, 2 a week. I had to attend and answer every question the counselor asked. I asked if I could repeat the same short sentence for every question. B. said as long as it was relevant to our marriage, it was fine. I thanked her and hung up. Tracy's lawyer ensured the counselor favored the wife and vilified the husband. I didn't care what the therapist thought as long as I followed the law. To every question and statement from Tracy and the therapist, I replied, I don't want to stay married to a promiscuous woman. Soon, they were both frustrated and angry. Despite the verbal abuse from both women, I remained calm and polite. After the 5th session, the therapist canceled the remaining sessions, calling them unproductive. The following months passed without change. I spent every spare minute with Bobby, strengthening our bond. 4 days before the divorce hearing, Tracy moved out with Bobby, and I was served with a restraining order. B contacted me with bad news. B, you know me better than that. Not one word is true, I said, trying to keep my composure. Okay, I needed to hear it from you. I will fight for you, but it will be hard without evidence. Has she provided all the information needed to investigate her allegations? B asked, her tone serious. Yes, I have the details in a folder in my office, I replied. Email me the information. Remember, you cannot contact her or your son until I tell you otherwise. If she calls, hang up immediately. Understood? B instructed. Got it, I repeated. 2 days later, I walked into the house after work and was shocked to see Tracy at the kitchen table. Her car wasn't there, so she must have come with someone else. My first impulse was to leave to avoid violating the restraining order, but she called out, Brian, turn around and listen if you want to see Bobby again. She had my attention. I just stared at her, keeping my distance. You don't have to say a word, just listen, she said. I stayed calm and non-confrontational. First, hand me your cell phone so I can turn it off, she demanded. I placed it on the table. She picked it up and turned it off to ensure no recording. I tried to talk you down, but you were stubborn. I had to resort to desperate measures. How does it feel to be on the other side? I claimed we had sex to turn back the clock, but Elliot convinced me to have a backup plan in case your lawyer objected. So I made up a story about you hitting me. We both know you never touched me, but I needed full custody of Bobby, leaving you with little time with him. It's cruel, but it gives me leverage. If you cancel the divorce and agree to join our group of friends, I'll lift the restraining order, move in, and we can resume our marriage. Bobby wouldn't be in a single-parent family. What's not to like? I promise you'll get used to it. What do you say, Brian? Live in the real world with me. You'll have a good time. She hit me where it hurt the most, my son. Nothing else in the world means as much to me as he does. I'll answer as soon as I can. For now, please leave, I insisted. She smirked as she walked past me, knowing she had leverage. I waited until I heard the door close. Looking out the window, I saw a shiny Lexus pull up, driven by Elliot Franklin. He must really want her in his group. I had a lot to think about. B informed me my presence at the divorce hearing wasn't required, but I wanted to be there. As I left the men's room heading to the courtroom, Tracy appeared and hissed, You had your chance, you bastard. I'll tear you to pieces in there. Your son will never know your name and will call another man father. I will marry a real man who trusts and believes in me. She spat in my face and hurried away. Onlookers stared, wondering what I had done. I wiped my face with a handkerchief and entered the courtroom, sitting in the back. I hoped my lawyer was as good as her reputation. While waiting, I listened to other divorce cases and noticed those representing themselves were at a disadvantage. Our case wasn't heard until 1 p.m., making for a long day. Tracy testified first, detailing the alleged assaults with dates, times, and locations. She sought custody, child support, alimony, and maybe even jail time for me. Despite her tearful testimony, my attorney B remained calm, drawing flowers in the margins of her notes. Tracy's lawyer painted me as a violent and unsuitable parent, claiming Tracy had tried to reconcile and that my jealousy destroyed our marriage. After Tracy's lawyer finished, B began her questioning. I want to confirm that you're certain of the dates, times, and locations of the alleged attacks. Could you be mistaken, Mrs. Wilson? B asked. No, ma'am. My attorney told me to document everything and I wrote it all on a calendar, Tracy responded confidently. So you swear under oath that your allegations are accurate and true? B pressed. Yes, ma'am. The truth must be told, Tracy responded tearfully. No further questions, Your Honor, B said. You may step down, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you, Judge Cor Feldman advised Tracy. She and her attorney seemed stunned that B didn't question her more thoroughly. Tracy's smirk said it all. She thought she had won. She was ready to turn my son against me, and the thought made me shudder. Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. James McMahon to the stand to testify, B requested. The judge nodded, and a plain man took the seat. Tracy and her lawyer conferred, looking puzzled. Please state your full name for the record, B asked. James Winford McMahon. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. May I call you James? B inquired. Jim, please, he responded. Thank you, Jim. Can you tell the court where you work and the nature of your business? B asked. I own and operate McMahon Investigative and Security Services, Jim explained. Jim, how did you meet my client, Mr. Wilson? B continued. He approached me about 14 months ago, concerned about his wife, Mrs. Tracy Wilson. He suspected infidelity, but had no proof. We offer private investigative services to confirm such suspicions, and he used our services, Jim answered. What did you discover during your surveillance of Mrs. Wilson? B asked. We gathered evidence of her infidelity and provided him with 3 photographs of her in bed with another man, Jim stated. Were those the only existing copies of her dating? B asked. No, ma'am. We store all photos and videos in secure cloud storage and maintain the originals. Mr. Wilson only received copies, Jim clarified. And do you have other copies of these images? B asked. Yes, right here. They are copies of the uncorrupted originals, Jim confirmed. Thank you, Jim. Your Honor, we would like to admit these 3 photographs into evidence, B requested. The judge accepted the photos, reviewed them, and handed them to the bailiff for processing. Thank you, Your Honor. Jim, was that the end of your association with Mr. Wilson? B asked. No, ma'am. He was concerned the affair might be ongoing and asked for guidance. I recommended installing hidden surveillance cameras and microphones throughout the house to monitor and record phone calls, secret meetings, and graphic images, Jim explained. And did Mr. Wilson hire your firm to do this? B inquired. Yes, ma'am. We installed the equipment the next day while Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were at work, Jim confirmed. Objection, Your Honor. Tracy's attorney protested. I request that all evidence obtained through those hidden cameras be declared inadmissible. Mr. Wilson could have easily altered those recordings to smear my client. Judge Cor Feldman looked at B. Before I rule on your objection, I'd like to find out if there are grounds for it. Attorney Thorne. Thank you, Your Honor, B replied. Jim, can you explain the nature and type of surveillance system installed in Mr. Wilson's home? All cameras transmit data wirelessly to a laptop hidden under the house, which is connected to a wired Ethernet hub, Jim explained. The data is streamed to our secure cloud servers. Mr. Wilson does not have access to the raw records. The laptop only stores the web address to which the content is sent. The only way to access these files is to contact my firm. We ensure the chain of evidence is constantly monitored. Mr. Wilson's only involvement is the monthly replacement of the camera batteries. Judge Feldman smiled at Jim and nodded. I've seen you in my courtroom before, Mr. McMahon. Your firm has an excellent reputation. The objection is overruled. Thank you, Your Honor, B responded, turning back to Jim. She continued, Jim, you heard Tracy Wilson's testimony accusing my client of assault. Here are the dates and times of the alleged assaults. Do you think her accusations have any merit? No, ma'am, they don't, Jim replied confidently. What makes you so sure? B asked. When we reviewed the recordings from those dates, there were no incidents of violence. Mr. Wilson was happily playing with his son, and Tracy Wilson was alone in another room. The house was peaceful at the times of the alleged assaults. Tracy and her attorney avoided eye contact, focusing on the floor. Jim, can you provide additional information regarding her allegations? B prompted. Yes. I have a transcript of a phone call Tracy made the day before she moved, Jim stated. She talked about hating to see her husband treated this way and mentioned someone else punching her up so she could blame him. She planned to use this as leverage against him. Objection, Your Honor. That's hearsay, Tracy's attorney interjected. I can provide the original tapes. The transcript is an accurate reflection of her words, Jim offered. Tracy's lawyer did not object further. Thank you, Jim. No further questions, Your Honor, B said, and sat down. Judge Feldman then addressed Tracy's attorney. Would you like to question this witness? Defeated, Tracy's attorney replied. No questions, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. You may leave the room, Judge Feldman said. Thank you, Jim responded, and then left the courtroom. After Jim took his seat, the judge continued. It's clear that an innocent man is being falsely accused to sway the court for full custody. Mrs. Wilson has perjured herself, a third-degree felony punishable by up to 36 months in prison. This transcript will be forwarded to the district attorney for possible prosecution. I grant full custody of Bobby Wilson to his father, Brian Wilson. Tracy Wilson will have visitation rights at Mr. Wilson's discretion. Mr. Wilson, please be generous with visitation, as your child needs his mother. I nodded in agreement. As for alimony, I award $1,000 per month to Tracy Wilson for 42 months. Each of you will keep your automobiles. The checking and savings accounts will be divided equally based on the balances as of the divorce petition filing date. Each party will retain their retirement accounts. Since Mr. Wilson has primary custody, the court will not award child support. Mr. Wilson, do you wish to stay in your current residence or move? Judge Feldman asked. I stood up. Your Honor, I don't want to live there any longer than necessary. Tracy can keep renting the house. I'm moving out. Very well, Mr. Wilson. The lease will be left to Mrs. Wilson, Judge Feldman confirmed. Tracy staggered to her feet. You have 8 hours to return the child to Mr. Wilson. If you refuse, you will be held in contempt of court. Understood? Yes, Your Honor, she said tearfully. Good. All restraining orders are lifted, and I grant the petition for divorce in Wilson v. Wilson. You will both receive divorce decrees within 30 days, Tracy cried, realizing she had lost her family. She turned to comply with the judge's order. Brian, I'll bring Bobby to your place tonight after dinner. I'd like to be with him for a few more hours, Tracy said, turning to me. That's not necessary, Tracy. I've already found a new apartment, and will move there as soon as I leave here. I handed her a piece of paper. Here's the address. Bring Bobby tomorrow at noon. I'll be settled in by then. She nodded sadly. I'm sorry this isn't the outcome I wanted. Well, now you can have the interesting love life you wanted without me. Good luck with your next open marriage, I said sarcastically. She didn't respond. Brian, thank you. For what? I asked, surprised. For not going after Elliot and Gail Franklin. They are wonderful people. Too bad you'll never know them like I did, she said. No problem. I have no interest in Elliot or Gail Franklin, but I am interested in your company. I found out they have a strict non-fraternization policy. Tomorrow I'll be suing your company, claiming violations of their policy destroyed my marriage and almost cost me my son. Ronald Hensley will be named as the main culprit. Apparently he slept with a dozen female employees. He's your manager, right? Tracy looked shocked. As it turns out, Ronald has a wife, Lydia, and 2 children. I don't know if she knows about his antics, but I'll make sure she does, including his relationship with Rita Consuela, or as you know her, Gail. But why? His wife and children don't deserve this, she pleaded. Neither did Bobby, I replied coldly. Why? He destroyed my marriage. Why shouldn't I destroy his? He almost took my son from me. Why shouldn't his children know the truth? Even now, you defend him. If you stick around, Tracy, you might get your dream man. He could be divorced within a year. The downside is, he might also be unemployed, just like your call center girlfriends. Their silence about Ronald's behavior also violates company policy. You want us all fired? How am I going to support myself now? She objected. Oh, don't worry, your job is safe. I promised your company I wouldn't publicize this as long as they kept you on staff. You might start your own group of followers. Just imagine how wonderful your life will be without me in the way. Once you explain how infidelity strengthened our marriage, the ladies will be eager to join. You might have trouble hiring another manager, but maybe one of the husbands will step up. Imagine all the exciting possibilities, I said. But why are you protecting my job and firing everyone else? She asked. Because Bobby needs a mother in his life. It's not a dream job and it doesn't pay much, but it's enough so you don't have to rely on me for money. When Bobby asks how I treated you in the divorce, I want to say I was fair. If you tell him otherwise, I'll show him the proof. Tracy and her friends didn't know I had known her lover's real name from the start. My private investigator did an excellent job. An engineer always approaches a problem with knowledge. If we don't have the answer, we find someone who does. B, my lawyer, sued Tracy's call center for $1.5 million and settled for a tidy sum. She kept $250,000 and the rest went to me. I wrote Tracy a check for $42,000. Paying my child support obligations in full with plenty left over to build my dream home. Word spread quickly at work, and many single ladies saw me as a potential catch, but after this roller coaster, I'm going to focus on Bobby for a while before dating again. Free at last.